I had this experience that was so powerful and so reality bending for me that knew that I wanted to share it with people. And I knew that I had control over how I viewed my past and how I viewed my future and could dictate what that was going to look like for myself. From that point forward, it became an exercise in asking myself, is X decision a vote for who I was or who I want to be? And every time it came to make a decision that would, kind of split that hair, I just kept making the decision towards the person that I want to be. When you get very clear on what really matters to you and defining what you want your life to look like, the rest just falls into place pretty seamlessly.
For Love of Memoir is a place for people who have a passion for human stories. The ones we tell, the ones we carry, and the ones we're still trying to understand. Here, we talk with writers about their life-changing experiences and what it takes to bring those stories onto the page and into the world. Whether you simply love a good story or aspire to write your own, you're in the right place. Hi, John.
Hey, Aaron, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon to you. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to, share your mindsets, your reality with you and all the ins and outs of what made that come to life.
I am happy to have you on the show. I'm excited to talk about it. This is the first time I've had an author come on and talk about psilocybin, which is one of my favorite subjects. So
Uh-oh,
this should
uh-oh.
be a fun one. This should be a fun conversation.
You've got personal experience?
I do. I do
Okay,
have plenty of personal experience.
beautiful.
I
It's
absolutely do.
funny,
Huge fan.
talking to so many people, you have so many people that are like, Scylla psilocybin, and then so many people that are like, oh yeah, completely changed my life. And so it's just so funny
Yeah.
to hear the range of people and their understanding of exactly what's going on with the
Right. It's a tricky looking word
substance.
if you don't have experience with it, right?
Exactly.
So your memoir is called Your Mindset is Your Reality. And
Hmm.
for our listeners who aren't familiar with you, why don't you just give us a summary of what it's about?
Yeah, so Your Mindset is Your Reality is a personal memoir that takes you through the intense mental health struggles that I was going through throughout my teens, 20s, and childhood that all kind of came to a head around the time of my 30th birthday. And it all started with when I decided to go to a music festival called EDC and ate some mushrooms in preparation for that. And so when I did that, it unlocked the key to understanding exactly what had happened to get me into the position that I was in my life and gave me the clarity and strength of mind to choose to live differently from that point forward. And it's been an incredible ride of everything that brought me up to that point, and everything in the 3 years since then has just been an absolutely unbelievable journey that I just feel so grateful to be in the midst of living right now.
Happy to hear it. What made you decide on memoir for your avenue to tell your story? What prompted that?
Well, really, I reached a point with my experimentation with psilocybin where I just recognized that uh, I was at a good place in life. I had a secure job, I had a place to live, I had people that genuinely cared about me. From all objective standpoints, I was in a very good place. But I had this experience that was so powerful and so reality bending for me that knew that I wanted to share it with people. And the how was the big question. I had had some experience with writing in the past, no books or anything like that, but had always received high marks on essays and things like that through high school and college. And so I felt confident in my writing ability and had told myself for a while that I wanted to write a book of some sort. And so when I had the inspiration through my experience, I recognized that this was an opportunity to really bring people into my mind and show the type of change that is possible in a very deep way that wouldn't be able to make its same type of impact if it were, in Instagram videos or YouTube videos or, even blogs online, that this really needed to be a long form type of content that allows the reader, the listener to really dig into the ins and outs of what made this so impactful and how they could use the same type of insights to better their own lives.
Congratulations to you too. I think I have a respect for anybody who has the fortitude to bring an entire book to pages and let alone publish it and print it. And you seem pretty young to have written a
Mhm.
memoir, so you're probably amongst a minority of people who've done that. Why don't you share with us, if you don't mind, what was life like before your mind started to shift? Because you used psilocybin, but there were some other things that I noticed in your
Mhm.
story that you kind of were moving, hoping to move in a new direction before you even really had that psilocybin experience. So just kind of tell us, like, what was your life like before that? What was in the driver's seat before the shifts happened?
Yeah. So, I mean, what was in the driver's seat was just immediate gratification in any form. And it didn't really matter what the vehicle was. It was just all a different way to get validation first and foremost. And, the primary driver of that was validation through sex. And so, interactions with women were the primary focus of everything that I was working towards on a daily basis. It was why I felt motivated to make money. It was why I felt motivated to go out and party. It was, the driving force behind everything I did. And so that kind of manifested in other addictions, whether that was alcohol or cocaine or pornography or whatever it was, that there were all these different things that were just acting as band-aids to cover up that deep-seated lack of uh, self-satisfaction, and self-confidence that I had suffered from my whole life and just never quite got to the point of understanding what it was that was driving that until I had my experience with psilocybin that just showed me exactly who John was and the things that were motivating me to act the way that I was.
Yeah, why do you think that is? Why do you, sometimes I think it's because it kind of allows us to step back and look at our thoughts from an observer standpoint rather than being
Mhm.
caught up in them. I think that's part of the magic.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I don't remember because as I transitioned the book from print into audiobook, there were some things that needed to be cut out, needed to be shortened just to make it more consumable for the audio listener. So I'm not sure if I use the term bystander mode as much in the audiobook as I do in the
Mm.
print version. But that was a big theme of what it really felt like to be on psilocybin, was that it really felt like I was watching a TV show of myself. And like you're watching a horror show and you're screaming, the monster's under the bed. He's right around the corner. Don't go in that shed. You're gonna die. I could yell those things to myself and actually hear them and actually listen and actually do something about it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's wild the way in which these cheap dopamine hits are just marketed to us constantly, right? They're around every
Mhm.
single corner. I don't think you're alone in like constantly wanting some kind of instant gratification, especially in a world where, man, we work. Like we were just making ends meet in this world these days is its own, challenge. Most people are working two or three jobs, if not ridiculous hours. And so we're always looking for something to just kind of make us feel better in the moment. And there's a lot of that stuff at our fingertips, right? We have a
Mhm.
lot working against us.
Yeah, and that was really a big motivator in writing the book and especially taking kind of the position that I do in it of trying to help other people because what I was dealing with wasn't rare by any means. I mean, even the alcoholism, even the cocaine usage is very common, like common to the point of that all of my friends around me were doing it. And
And
you
successful.
yeah, yeah, and successful, right? Nobody's life is completely ruined. I still had a very good job. I still had a great group of friends. I still had a social life and all these things, but my finances were being drained. My health was taking a huge, huge, huge hit in a
Mm,
way that I didn't even really truly understand until I took a large step away from all of this and could see the effect that not being on alcohol and cocaine for as long
mm,
as I was had after. And so what I was dealing with wasn't rare by any means. And so that was a big part in me writing it was showing that, yeah, you might think that life is pretty good and that, you're having fun and that all of these things are just, very minor blips in the road, that you can still live a good life otherwise. But what if I told you that life could be so much better? And so that
mm.
was really the point that I wanted to try to make is that we all have so much potential to do incredible things with ourselves. And the more that we get caught into these loops of, pursuing cheap dopamine and these things that ultimately don't matter to who we really are in the world and the type of person that one it just takes us further and further away from creating the type of impact that we're meant to create.
Yeah, yeah, I would agree. I mean, even from a spiritual place, I think that everybody on the planet has a purpose to serve, and it's really hard to find that when we're constantly distracting ourselves and numbing our feelings, right? I feel like
Exactly.
feelings, emotions, especially the strong and raw emotions, are the language of the soul. Like that, it's telling you something. So putting a band-aid over it is just taking you further and further and further away from who you really are.
Exactly. And like going back to the psilocybin aspect of it, that's a big thing that really shows up for people, is that like everybody's scared of having a bad trip.
Mhm.
And bad trips are really just when emotion that's repressed or, not addressed comes to the surface in a very
Yeah.
powerful way. And a lot of people aren't ready for it, which is why, they have trip sitters and we have, these ceremonies in different
Can be
countries that
intense.
allow for people to
Yeah.
have that space for themselves. Yeah, because it is extremely intense and because um we're not putting a band-aid over it with psilocybin. You're
Yeah.
ripping that band-aid off and saying, look, you have to take
Absolutely.
a peek at what's there.
I feel like that about all plant medicine, honestly, whether it be
Mhm.
weed or mushrooms, or I don't know if you've ever done DMT, but it's a similar, much more intense effect for a really short period of time, thank
Yeah.
goodness. But I feel like plant medicine has this way of showing you what you need to see, not
Mhm.
necessarily what you want to see. So it's not something that I party with. It's not something that I play with lightly because I like I never
Yeah.
know. I never really know what I'm gonna get.
Exactly, exactly. Like I mean, you heard my story, and the first few times that I did it, it was such an emotional roller coaster that if I had gone into my weekend at EDC having not experienced that, and those wounds got opened
Mm,
in that environment, oh my God, we would be having a completely different conversation right now,
right.
if any conversation at all, right? But yeah, it really needs to be done in a way that gives you, the user, the ability to be with your thoughts and be with emotions and process and understand what's going on. And when they're used recreationally, a lot of stuff can go sideways.
Mhm.
People generally don't hurt themselves on psychedelics, and that's one of the most positive things about them is that there's not really a lethal dose. There's anecdotes about people jumping off buildings and stuff like that, but that's completely overblown as far as I'm aware.
Yeah.
Um, and so it's not really something that can harm you physically, but it can create a very, very, very distressful emotional state for yourself. And that's what you need to be careful on when using these things. And that's why I mean, I'll still use them if I'm going out to a concert or something like that, but I
Sure.
really don't advocate for people just using them flippantly.
Well, and especially not a massive dose, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
So take us back to that first time. What do you think? Because it sounds like you kind of were in the party, right? For that
Mhm.
first time that you took mushrooms. So what made you do it, and why do you think it worked at that time?
Yeah, well, so I mean, I'll back up because the first time I really did was when I was 18. It was the day after I quit playing baseball.
Mm,
Terrible, terrible, terrible timing. Worst day probably in my entire life to try psychedelics for the first time. And so that was a really distressful time. And so that scared me away from it for 11 years. And, I'd used LSD a number of times over that time frame, and I had a much better experience with LSD. I kind of felt comfortable in that state of mind, though I never got the oh my God, wow moment from LSD. I had a number of small moments that helped me make positive changes, whether it was, choosing to eat healthier foods or evaluating relationships with girls in a different way and things of that nature. But never truly had that like big wow moment. And so leading up to my weekend at EDC, I was looking for LSD to do during the concert because I was comfortable with it, couldn't find it. Was looking for MDMA because I was comfortable with that, couldn't find it. But a friend had psilocybin. I'm like, okay, well, didn't exactly have the greatest first time, but we'll give this another shot. And so, started with a half-gram dose, which is just a little bit more than a microdose, basically. And I had gotten home from bar hopping with one of my friends on a Sunday afternoon and ate a half a gram of it. And when I did that, it started out as kind of like the same feeling as a weed edible, very light body high type of feeling. And my friend and I are talking, and a memory comes up of a relationship that had ended 3 years prior. It had been a 4.5 year relationship that I never truly processed correctly. And in the 3 years that followed the end of that relationship, anytime a memory would come up, I would just lock it away and say, okay, we don't need to think about that.
Mm,
But with psilocybin in my brain and one of those memories come up, there's no ability for me to lock it away. I can't shut it up. I can't stop it. And it just
mhm,
floods me. And it's the only thing I can think about. But it forced me to process it. It forced me to think about the relationship. And it forced me to say, oh, wait a second. We weren't right for each other anyway. There was this whole long period of basically half the relationship where we weren't truly right for each other. And that gave me the clarity to say, you know, I don't feel pain from the end of this relationship anymore. I can think about the end of this relationship without it causing me distress or causing me to shy away from the memories because I recognize that it doesn't matter because it's over and it's in the past and because we weren't right for each other to begin with. So why should I want to hide away from those memories?
mhm,
And so, it started out as a recreational thing, just eating mushrooms with my friend on my apartment couch. But it turned into me crying for 4 hours straight and, being kept awake late into the night by my own emotions and calling out of work for the first time basically ever without a very extreme reason. But just the reason was that I was just so emotionally distraught, that I decided I needed to give myself a day. And it was just one of these like, wow, there was a lot that went on there, type of thing. And, 2 weeks after that, I'm like, okay, well, haven't truly experienced what mushrooms are like. So let's do a gram. So I doubled the dose and had a much more pleasant experience. As you heard during the audiobook, it was the night that I went down to the Riverwalk and all of the anxiety and depression that I knew to be constant my whole life finally stopped, and I was able to appreciate everything that had brought me to that point in life. And that was the first time that I ever remember feeling real true gratitude for anything in my life. And it just engulfed everything. It engulfed, where I was, it engulfed my friends, it engulfed my family, it engulfed all of the negative things, getting fired, getting, broken up with, needing to move to Connecticut during the middle of the pandemic and feeling isolated from friends for a year because all of that had to happen to bring me exactly to where I was at that moment. And without a single piece of that, I wouldn't have been right there. And I knew that from that point forward, that I had control over how I viewed my past and how I viewed my future and could dictate what that was going to look like for myself. And so that really started, the train of one good little decision after the other that's followed since then.
mm. Can you give us an example? Because it sounds like you kind of were flooded with emotion in that particular experience. Give us an example of how you were able to transform your mindset after that
Hmm.
experience with mushrooms.
Yeah, well, is there any one particular thing that you'd like me to touch on, Erin? Because there's a million different ways I could go with that.
Whichever way you want to answer it is fine with me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so really the biggest thing was that, from that night forward, um, I was able to get very clear on what I wanted my life to look like. And, up until that point, I was a party guy, right? I was a partier. That was my identity. I was the guy who always had Coke on him, who always was down to go get a drink, who always was down to do whatever, right? If there was a way to take up the experience another notch, you could call Johnny and he would make sure that you had a good time. And I recognized at that point that that wasn't who I wanted to be. I wanted to be somebody who took care of himself, who worked
Mm,
hard towards things, who inspired others to be better. And so I got a very clear vision for how I wanted to live my life. And I mean, even at that point, I couldn't have imagined that it would escalate to the point that it has now with my physical fitness and the things that I'm doing. But from that point forward, it became an exercise in asking myself, is X decision a vote for who I was or who I want to be. And every time it came to make a decision that would, kind of split that hair, I just kept making the decision towards the person that I want to be. It's 10:30 on a Saturday night and my friends want to go to an X bar. I've only had two drinks to this point. I'm not drinking heavily, but is going to that next bar and staying out for an extra hour and a half and having one more drink, is that a vote for the person that I want to be? Or
Mm.
is that a vote for the person that I was? And so, it just became a routine thing that I wouldn't stay out late. I wouldn't make that decision to go down the road that I don't want to go down. I would do things that, you know, yeah, I'm still hanging out with friends, but I'm not going to that extreme that I was so many times in the past. And so it just became one good little decision after another until eventually I'm not going out at all. I'm not drinking at all. I'm, waking up at 4:30 in the morning to go out on 15-mile runs and things like that, And so it just became one good little decision after the other. And when you get very clear on what really matters to you and defining what you want your life to look like, the rest just falls into place pretty seamlessly.
Man, I think that you just hit the nail on the head. I think the key is I was actually just talking to a friend of mine about this earlier today, as a matter of fact. I think the key is really getting clear on what you want, not what you think you want, not
Hmm.
what you've wanted before, but what you really, really want out of life. And then you just hold space for that. And it will happen. It's like magic. It
Yep.
absolutely is. It will absolutely happen as long as you keep that as the priority at the forefront of your mind. You don't even really have to do anything as long as you know exactly what it is and keep it at the forefront of your mind. Your life will fall into place for it, and doors
Yep.
will open up for you that you didn't even know were possible.
Exactly. It's like the whole thing about manifesting, right? Is
Yeah.
that the concept kind of gets a bad rap in popular culture.
Mhm.
People think about crystal girls and, oh, I'm manifesting, and but it's real.
It
It
is, and
is
there's a
very
science
real.
behind it. There's actually a science behind how the brain works and how having an expanded consciousness, which is what mushrooms do for you, right? Let's
Hmm.
be honest, it expands your consciousness. And if you can sort of carry that with you and you can keep an expanded consciousness, let's call it positive thought or belief that everything is working out for you, then you will automatically recognize opportunities that you wouldn't if your mind was closed down to the possibility.
Yep.
Have you ever heard of a guy by the name of David Bayer?
I haven't.
Oh man, I have been gobbling up his content lately, and he wrote a book called A Changed Mind. And
Okay.
he like, I'm sure you're familiar with Joe Dispenza, whom I absolutely
Mhm.
adore, but his stuff is a little above my pay grade sometimes, or at least I feel like I will have to sit down and like really, really study what he says.
It's like when I'm reading or listening to him, it's like I can't be riding a
Yeah,
bike and doing it, or like working. I,
exactly.
I literally have to sit there and listen.
Yep,
So
it's a study.
fast.
Like you have to study what he's saying, and he
Mhm.
makes sense, right? But this guy, David Baer, especially in his book that I recently read, does a really good job of breaking down the science. Like it is rooted in science. So you're just like, holy cow, it all makes so much sense because it
Mm.
feels like that whole like the law of attraction that came out in like 2014 or 2015, whatever it was, the secret law of attraction. It's
Mhm.
great, but it's really foundational, in my opinion. I've always kind of felt like there was a secret ingredient that was missing from the
Mm.
recipe.
Mm.
They didn't quite give me all of it, but the soul knows that it's true. It is
Mhm.
true. And I think the key, back to your point, is really honing in on what do I really want for my life? What do I really truly want?
Yep, completely.
So, in writing your book, was there a part of your story um, that brought up strong emotion that was
Oh,
particularly difficult to write?
oh man, all of it.
Mm.
I mean, if I had counted the number of times that I cried while writing my book, it was countless, from I mean, even like reading the audiobook, I'm sure there were a number of times when you're listening to it where you could hear me choking up while I'm, reading, especially like the parts about my brother and my dad and my nephew and yada yada yada, because it's just it is like the book is so personal. the book is so personal. And,
Mm.
I made it a point to not cut out anything for fear of what people might think. I wanted to tell the story as openly, as honestly as possible because, like I quote from Mark Manson, it's impossible to be an important and life-changing presence to some people without also being a complete joke and embarrassment to others. And by being open and honest and really freaking vulnerable with myself, it allows people the opportunity to connect with me and grow with me and to symbiotically learn from what I went through and be able to use it for themselves. So there was just emotional moment after emotional moment. Yeah, a lot of tears.
Yeah. Memoir done well is always from a very vulnerable place, as vulnerable as you can get as I stumble over my words. Did you pick a piece to read for us? I would love to hear you read a piece.
Sure. We want to talk about tears, man. Yeah, so Aaron, this is from the Somebody Hug Me night, which is kind of like an emotional crescendo with the story. And at this point, I am tripping for the first time. It was my third experience with using psilocybin as documented in the book. And I'm talking about an ex-girlfriend that we had broken up 3 years prior. And so I'm going to pick up right after talking about how I had messaged that ex-girlfriend wanting to apologize for the person that I was during the relationship. And she had blocked me. And so we're picking up from there. As I visualized Misty in that decision point, I recognized the overwhelming amount of anguish that I had caused, an anguish that still overrode any potential positives that interacting with me would bring. I internalized her pain as it overtook my being, but it wasn't the emptiness of loss or the agony of a broken heart. It was the hurt that I caused being echoed back to me, as if I could dive into that connection and literally feel the distress that she felt. I knew that it was time to cease putting energy into that thread. I hurt her. I hurt her. I hurt her. The words shot around in my head, beginning as a whisper and growing with each echo. I hurt her. I hurt her. I fucking hurt her. I had never considered the memories in the same way that I did that night, had never given proper attention to the full effect of my actions. But the reality of it was now inescapable. It was as if I were watching the memories of our relationship as a bystander, able to see the events play out without the lens of my own self-consideration. I couldn't handle it. I clutched myself as I rocked back and forth. Tears poured out of my eyes in an endless stream. I contorted and writhed on the couch, watching the heartbreaking movie that was our relationship play out in my mind. I saw all of the happiness that we cultivated in each other and all of the issues that I had created. I was no longer able to repress the memories and dissociate. The responsibility for my actions was unavoidable. For the first time, I understood the immense pain that I caused and knew that I was the one who caused it. I was having a bad trip and needed someone else to be with me for support. RJ had gone to bed before we started playing Mario Kart, so I let him sleep. Instead, I pulled out my phone to find someone to come to my rescue. I called Shauna, Jacob, and Anya, who were the last to leave. 3 calls, 0 answers. Tears clouded my vision, but I was able to concentrate enough to type out this text to our 8-person group chat. Hey dudes, sorry to be blowing you up, but I'm uncomfortably high and would love if someone kept me company. Thank you, Jacob, for daring me to eat that mushroom cap, but literally begging with every ounce of my being for someone to please be present here with me. I paused to collect my emotions and realized how boy cries wolf that sounded of me. Okay, sorry. First time experiencing this, eh? We'll stop there.
That was such a good part. So, what do you think the next day after you had kind of worked through the trauma of it? Can you tell us a
Mhm.
little bit about how you processed Misty? Because you never got closure from her, right? She never reached out, she never unblocked you. You were never able to say, I'm sorry. So,
No.
can it take us into your world a little bit about how you were able to work through that because of that experience?
Yeah, well, so it was one of those things that I reached I reached a point of contentment within myself after that. And I
Mm,
recognized that I had done all of the processing that I needed to do on my end to be okay and comfortable with
mm,
everything that happened. I recognized that I needed to make a huge apology. And so, even though I was unable to then, I, held out hope that I'd be able to reach out to her at some point. And so, I kind of tucked it away in the back of my mind and waited until I was ready to publish the book, before reaching out to her to just see if she'd be okay with me using her name, if nothing else. And, apologizing was the big part of that would have preceded that ask. And so, I tried to reach out to her in a number of different ways. I emailed her, never got a response. I think I tried messaging her on Facebook or something. I messaged one of her friends that was really close to her and just to see if she'd be able to reach out to her for me. And she did, just to ask her if I could use her name, and she said no, which is why it's Misty. Never truly got closure there, and it's okay. I would love the opportunity to apologize to her, apologize to her family.
Mm.
Uh, but if she doesn't want that for herself, that's her prerogative, and
Mhm.
it is what it is.
Yeah, I think sometimes too, it's equally as important that we give ourselves, apologize to ourselves so that we can allow ourselves the grace to move past it,
Hmm.
right? What belief about yourself had to change in order for you to grow?
Ooh, what didn't have to change, man? I mean, there was the belief that I was, John the partier, first and foremost, the belief that I needed alcohol and cocaine to feel comfortable socially, which I obviously didn't. There was the belief that I wasn't, a true athlete, that I wasn't somebody who could go out and achieve the things that I have achieved in the past number of years, which I don't really get to in the book. Well, I guess I sort of start to get to, but it really started to take hold like 2 months after I published the book. Um, you know, there was uh there was an endless number of limiting beliefs, thinking that I'm not smart enough, not attractive enough, not confident enough, all of these things that I told myself over and over and over again. When I finally was able to strip it back and ask myself, okay, what do I actually truly believe about myself? Was able to rework a number of those things. And, I think the moment where I'm doing yoga in the crowd at EDC kind of highlights that, right? Is that there's all these things that I was telling myself that I couldn't do because of other people's opinions of me for whatever reason, but it was just because I had that opinion of other people. I had that opinion of myself that like it wasn't cool to do yoga in a crowd, or it wasn't cool to go out somewhere and not have a drink, right? So all of these things that I'm worried about other people thinking of me are really just my prejudices being echoed
Mhm.
back. And so, I just had to ask myself, where do these thoughts actually come from? And it was like, one after the other that I was able to say, wait, no, that doesn't make sense. Let's start thinking about this differently. And just chose to look at life with a more positive lens.
Mm. It's all just a big reflection, right, my friend? It's amazing how
Hmm.
everything that we view is just a big reflection of who we are inside and what our thoughts and beliefs are.
Most
Was
definitely.
there a moment when you realized that you were creating your own suffering through your thinking, the way your mindset was?
Yeah. Well, that was kind of the big aha moment on the final day of EDC. And, earlier that day, I had had an hour-long conversation with my mother, who um, has always been, such a beautifully kind-hearted person, and someone who truly wanted the best for me in so many regards. Um, but her way of showing that was through protecting me from things that she deemed unsafe, or, deemed too risky. And so, I had to have the conversation with her that final day that, that I was using mushrooms and that it had created this incredible positivity in my life over the last month, or whatever it had been, leading up to that point. And we have that conversation. I can tell that she doesn't quite understand exactly what I'm going through yet. But about 6 hours after that, I'm in the crowd at one of the shows at the festival. And I have this moment where I realize that even though I'm recognizing that my life is completely different now than it was a month ago, and that I'm in such a beautifully incredible place that literally nothing in my life changed except for how I viewed my life.
Mhm.
And so that really became the heart. They became the title. Your mindset is your reality. Because at that moment, I took out my phone and I texted that to my mom, because that was kind of like the summation of our conversation, that I was able to look at life in a different way, and that I knew that life would be in a much different position moving forward. And so that was really the big aha moment of, oh, wow, nothing actually changed, but everything changed. And
Mm.
so it's a really beautiful thing to recognize that it all comes down to what happens between these 2 years.
Right. Well, and it sounds like you were experiencing an immense amount of gratitude, which I think is also another key ingredient, just being grateful for where we are and what we have and what our abilities are in each given moment.
Most
How has
definitely.
all of that inner work impacted your relationships now?
Uh, well, I was not somebody who, just objectively speaking, looking at myself and who I was 3 years ago, would have been a good partner for anybody. I mean, just how I took care of myself physically, my mental, how I gave and received love was just very convoluted, because I didn't love myself. I didn't have that self-confidence to not need to seek so much from another person more than they were able to give.
Mm-hmm.
And now I've been married for 3 months, 4 months, 4 months. Yeah,
Congratulations.
thank you. My wife and I met on September 7th of last year and got married on July 5th of this year.
Wow. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. It's been a beautiful ride, and she's such an incredible person that, the person that I was before never would have been able to connect with in the way that we've connected, but we just have the most incredible, loving, wonderful relationship that I could have ever imagined. And it's just so, so, so beautiful to have her in my life.
Oh, I'm so happy to hear. How does your mom deal with your still? Do you still use mushrooms?
I do, yes.
Okay. And
Yep.
how is she with it now? Because if I remember in the book, she kind of was like, okay, I'll support you, but I'm not real sure if I'm on board with this.
Yeah. She still kind of has the same reaction to the psychedelics themselves.
Mhm.
Although she sees what I've done in my life over the last 3 years, whether that's, you know, writing the book, whether that's marrying Thansha, whether that's completing the 100-mile ultra marathon that I did last weekend, that she sees all of these incredible things that I've been able to do since this substance entered my life. And so, yeah, she doesn't quite support it yet. But it's in a very different place than we were 2 years ago. And I'll explain what I mean by that. So, I had this experience with psilocybin, and it happened between October and November of 2022. And when I went home for Christmas in 2022, it was the main thing, right? It was this, oh my God, what happened to me? And I just wanted to tell everybody about it. And
Mhm.
she doesn't understand it. I hadn't told her about the cocaine usage at that point. And so I told her when I was home. And, she just she didn't have a great understanding. She didn't have a great taste in her mouth, because I was just very, hey, look at all these things that are an incredible thing that you can do with this. And she didn't quite understand it. So when I went home for Christmas the next year, she picked me up from the airport and she goes, "Hey, John, can we just like not talk about mushrooms while you're home here?" And I'm like, you understand that's like you're asking me to hide a piece of myself that is very important. Like I'm literally writing a book. I'm close to finishing a book that details how these things change my life. And you expect me to not talk about that? Like, do you have
Mhm.
any idea how rude that is, how dismissive that is of the experience that I had? And so while she no longer dares to ask me to mute myself from that standpoint. Um, she doesn't quite get it yet, but she's more accepting now than she was,
Mhm.
a couple years ago. And just, I just have to continue to live my life in the most positive way that I can. And, when she's ready to come around to it, she'll be ready to come around to it.
It's amazing at how hard it is. It's amazing to me how hard it is for some people. I mean, I guess it makes sense. It's classified as a drug, which I don't think it falls in that category. I would really like to normalize some different verbiage around plant medicine in general.
Right.
I think drugs are synthetic, but I suppose just being such a taboo topic and being lumped in with things like cocaine and heroin,
Yeah.
you know what I mean, automatically puts it on the bad list.
Well, I kind of couch it in my description of the conversation that I have with her. At least I do more effectively in the book than I'm able to in audiobook, just because it's like an incredible amount of detail that I can't quite get into. But like she was born in 1955, and so
Mm,
she was a teenager in the 70s. By that point, LSD, psilocybin, so on and so forth, were already class one scheduled drugs, uh, and had been vilified largely because the US government was scared of the hippie movement and scared of counterculture and scared
yep,
that people weren't going to be on board with the war. And so they had to vilify it in any way possible. And so there's all this negative propaganda out there about it
100%.
that, unless you're a complete rebel, you're not going to try it and you're going to be part of the America of, pick yourself up by your bootstraps and go to war for your country and yada, yada, yada. And, so it's really understandable that people born in that era wouldn't have the most open and understanding relationship with plant medicine. But it's very wrong. And, thankfully, we're at a point now where it's being shown just how wrong it is, and culture is really catching up to the incredible potential of these things to help people in a majorly positive way.
Yeah, I mean, I think we have the internet to thank for that. We all have access to have conversations with other people from other countries and
Hmm.
visit other countries and learn things outside of exactly what you just described that's pretty mind-opening. I mean, there are tribes in South America that have been doing this for eons.
Yeah.
It's just part of their culture. It's part of their spiritual culture.
Well, you're familiar with the stoned ape theory?
I'm sorry, what the what?
Stoned ape theory?
Stoned ape. No.
Yeah. So this guy, Terrence McKenna, had a theory that was popularized back in like the 70s or 80s that psilocybin has such an incredible neuroplastic effect
Hmm.
that the theory is that ancient hominids, right, human type beings, were scouring around the land and started eating magic mushrooms.
Mushrooms.
And it helped their minds develop into being able to use tools and start fires and all of these incredible things that kind of just set the groundwork for human development. And I think that there's a lot of credence to that, whether it's factually correct or not, but the thought process I think is extremely sound. And it reminds me of a book I read by Michael Pollan, which you may be familiar with his book, How to Change Your Mind,
Mhm.
which was made into a documentary on Netflix and has been very popular way for people to truly get an understanding of psychedelics. But he wrote another book called This Is Your Mind on Plants. And in This Is Your Mind on Plants, he takes the reader through three different plants, poppy, aka heroin,
Mhm.
mescaline, and caffeine.
Mhm.
And the section on caffeine is really eye-opening to me because it talks about how in the 1400s, the Western world at that point, Western Europe, uh, was not moving forward in any discernible type of way. We were stuck in the dark ages for hundreds, if not thousand plus years. And a large reason for that was there wasn't clean drinking water. All of the rivers and streams and lakes had been contaminated with feces and things of that nature. And so there wasn't clean drinking water. And the
Mhm.
only thing that you could drink that wouldn't get you sick was alcohol.
Mhm.
But then tea came over from, China and India and coffee, and you had to boil that to make it. So all of a sudden, you have clean drinking water through tea and coffee, and it's no longer a nervous system depressant like alcohol, it's a nervous system stimulant. So people were more energetic and more willing to go do things and talk about ideas and grow and develop. And so tea and coffee largely brought us out of the dark ages and into the Enlightenment period. And
Mhm.
I believe that psilocybin is going to have a similar hugely positive impact on society as a whole. And if not, strictly psilocybin, also, MDMA, LSD, DMT, so on and so forth,
Mhm.
in terms of the potential of these things to help us reach a new level for ourselves. And whether that's, just on a human connection standpoint and understanding the impact that we all make on each other. Um, or if it's, on a athletic standpoint and helping us reach a new level athletically. The speech that I gave this past weekend was focused on that, on the ability of psychedelics to help us reach a new level athletically. And I think there's incredible potential there.
Wow, I'd be speech. Where did you give that speech? I'd be interested to hear that.
Yeah, so well, I ran 100 miles starting
Yeah,
Saturday
I heard you
morning.
say that. A hundred
Yes.
mile marathon.
Yep, yep. So
Wow.
that started Saturday morning, and I finished that in 23 hours. So I finished Sunday morning at 4 a.m.
Okay.
Uh, and I had a speech that night at this event called Canadelic, which is a cannabis and psychedelics convention, which I document in the book. And I talk
Hmm.
about how I got invited to speak at that for the first time. And so that was last July that I spoke there for the first time. This May, I spoke at the one in Miami with former Heisman Award winning running back Ricky Williams and also Mark the Shark Irwin, a world champion bare knuckle boxer, as well as a couple other people influential in the space. But this past Sunday, not last Sunday, but the Sunday before, I had the opportunity for my first solo presentation. And so this was coming on the heels of me running 100 miles, getting essentially zero sleep, and my body just being wrecked. Uh,
Depleted. Yeah.
yes, but the crux of the speech was what can psychedelics do to help us reach a new level athletically? And after completing 100 miles in under 24 hours and eating mushrooms the whole way, I felt like I was a pretty well established authority to be able to speak on that.
Yeah. Wow, how fascinating. Is that something that was recorded at Canadelica?
Yes. Yep.
Okay, cool. I'll have to
Yep.
look it up. Maybe you
Yeah,
can
it's
provide me with a link or something and I'll drop it in the show notes.
yeah, I'd be happy to. It's
Okay,
it's on YouTube right now. Although I'm waiting for the raw footage to get to me so that I can make reels and stuff out of it.
sure.
I'm really looking for that high quality footage to be able to use and make social media content. But yeah, I'll be able to share that
Yeah,
with you.
so cool. Yeah, I would love to watch that.
Mhm.
What did you decide on for publishing?
Well, I use Amazon.
Okay.
Yeah, it was, what appeared to me as the easiest route to go. It was pretty painless in the end. I had I had my aunt edit the book, and then I hired a separate editor that, there wasn't many changes that needed to be made after I
Good.
got the book to the point that I wanted to. I was able to publish it through Amazon in a timely fashion, get the books in before that first Canadelic. Now, there was probably about 10% of the book that I added after that,
Hmm.
and that I, then used that version to create the audiobook. So it wasn't exactly where I wanted it to be when I first published it for
Hmm.
Canadelic because I needed to do it in kind of a crunch time frame.
Sure.
But I was able to get it to a point in the few months that followed that I really feel proud of where it stands right now. And, being able to do that through Amazon and make updates as I needed was a really, really positive aspect of that.
Very cool. Any hiccups that you didn't expect?
Not really, honestly. I mean, little things like, making sure that the cover was the right size and things like that are a little bit of a pain in the butt sometimes. But
Hmm.
yeah, it was a pretty easy process.
Good.
Man, doing the audiobook now that was a different story, man. That was frustrating.
That's an endeavor.
I recorded it all the way through like 4 or 5 times,
Wow.
like reading the book.
Hmm.
And the first time I did, there was so much background noise that I just couldn't go that. The second time, I realized that there just wasn't enough emotion and emphasis in my voice.
Mm.
Then, the third time, I, I don't know, third, fourth, whatever. Eventually, I got to the point where I was like, I'm losing interest listening to this myself. It's too long-winded. There's too much detail. It's not coming out right. And so I spent like 3 or 4 months converting the whole thing from the actual book into a script to use for the audiobook
Mm.
and then needed to record it through twice that way. So it was a very long process of getting it to the point that that it's at now where I feel good enough about it to release. But yeah, it was a lot. It was a
It was
lot.
worth it though. It was worth it.
Yeah,
Speaking
very
as
much so.
someone who listened to it on audio, there's something so powerful about hearing somebody tell their own story in their own voice.
Thank you, Aaron.
What has the response from readers been like? How about particularly your family and friends that didn't know this part of your story?
Yeah, it's funny. First off, my family, you have like my brother and my brother's wife had great things to say about it. They really loved it. Especially like the telling of my brother's story and being able to bring that to life in a way that really emotionally hits home for people.
Mm,
Um, my dad hasn't read it or listened to it. I think it's just too much for him.
hmm
My mom really internalizes a lot of stuff. She thinks that it makes her look like a bad person, bad mother,
hmm
and I'm like, Mom, I don't think anybody thinks that except for you. Even my dad's Irma had reached out to me like, "Hey, do you have your mom's phone number? I want to tell her how amazing she is after reading your book." And so like I really think that my mom just internalizes stuff a little bit too much and takes too much away from it in terms of like how it affects her.
mm.
Um, my nephew just finished it for the first time. He's doing 75 hard right now, and so he just finished it, and so he really loved that, and he was able to get a lot from it. Friends, it's crazy. Like none of my friends have touched it. None of my friends have
Really?
read it. None of them have given me any sort of response. At least like the friends that I consider like close friends.
hmm
I've got a number of people in my life who I'm friends with, but maybe not like that
Yeah,
close level of friends.
sure.
And they all just have so many positive things to say about the way that it's touched them in some way. Like the response has just been exactly what I had hoped it would be, in terms of the emotional impact that it has for people. And that's all across the spectrum, women, man, old, young, so on and so forth. Everybody finds something different in the story that really
Mm.
resonates with them. And I think that that's so beautiful because it really is an all-encompassing story of how I was able to look at myself and choose the life that I wanted to live. And I was hoping that by sharing as openly as I did, that it would touch people in a very deep way. And I've absolutely gotten that response. And so it's just so fulfilling to hear that.
So if you had to pick one thing that you hope readers take away from reading it, what would it be?
Uh, Personal autonomy. I
Mm,
mean, I say it in the book, mushrooms are the thing that kind of jump started this and allowed me the opportunity to look at myself with a clear lens. But it's not the mushrooms that changed me. It was
hmm
me. It was the desire to want to be better for myself and the action that I took every single day. And, through that lonely period of the year that followed between the events that are kind of the center of the book and when I did my first Spartan race, there was all of this like, mushrooms, why can't you help me? Like, bring me to this next level. And it's like, dude, it's not the mushrooms, it's you. Like, go do shit. Like, oh, okay. Right. And so I just want people to recognize that for themselves, that it's not mushrooms, it's
Yeah.
not like one singular thing. It's a choice every single day to be a little bit better for yourself and just to find what really matters to you and go towards that. And so, I hope people recognize that for themselves while reading the book, that there's so much that you're able to look at and analyze and be better on. And it's just about finding that one little thing every day to make yourself a little bit better.
Beautiful. What reality are you living today that the younger you would not believe?
I mean, I hadn't run in 11 years from the time I was a freshman in college until that first Spartan race in December of 2023. I actually went on my first run in adulthood 2 years ago, Sunday, November 16th. And so to go from not running in 11 and a half years to completing a 100-mile ultra marathon in under 24 hours is something that like even telling myself that now, I like sort of can't believe it. It just seems like such an astronomical way above what I feel that I'm capable of type of thing. But having done it, it's not big enough. It's not enough of a challenge. Like I need to find something that really challenges me in a way that forces me to dig even deeper within myself, and that's a scary thing.
But how exciting too, though, right?
How exciting indeed to do
So
something that is such a massive test and be like, yep, too easy. What's next?
next, so tell me a little bit about this 100 mile marathon. I have a friend who did it this summer in the crazy mountains in Montana.
Mm.
How many hours did they give you to finish?
So the cutoff was 36 and a half
36
hours.
hours, and you did
Yep,
it in 23.
correct.
So how many people enrolled in that race?
77,
And how many people completed it on time?
55.
That is just wild.
I came in sixth overall.
Congratulations.
Yeah, I came in sixth overall, which still blows my
Sixth
mind.
overall.
hmm
Wow. Wow. What were you in the men's category?
Sixth.
Sixth. Okay. And
Yep.
sixth
Yep.
overall. I guess that makes sense because wow.
Yeah.
Congratulations. That's huge.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, it's wild. It's wild. It's wild. It's wild on so many fronts.
I'm sure. I'm sure it is. I'm sure after a few months after you've kind of had time to process it, do you think you'll do it again?
Tomorrow?
No, do you think you'll run another 100-mile marathon?
Yeah, yeah, tomorrow. You want to go tomorrow? We can set one up.
No, no way, man. This right here is as close as I'll ever get to running 100 miles all at once.
You say that now. What happens in 2 years?
Right? You
Dun,
never
dun,
know.
dun.
With enough mushrooms, I might change my mind, I
Yeah,
guess.
there we go. There we go. Now you're
So where
thinking.
can listeners find a copy of your book?
Yeah, so Amazon primarily, print, Kindle, also audiobook. You can also find it on Apple Audiobooks. So find it there. The title is Your Mindset is Your Reality. It's got a purple cover.
Excellent.
Hmm.
What are you doing now? What you up to?
Yeah, so right now working on the personal training business, working on the psilocybin coaching, trying to public speak, trying to get the word out about the book. I really I want to be looked at as someone that changes the world's perspective on what psilocybin can do and how we can use this as a tool to better ourselves in a major way. And so, like I said before, it's about creating a life for yourself and finding your why and working towards that every single day. And so that is really my why, is that I want to be someone that changes the way that the world sees psychedelics. And so everything that I do is with that in mind, and I aim to continue to work towards that every single day until I'm exactly where I want to be.
Well, great. Make sure that you send me the links to all of your stuff, and I'll make sure and put your training and your coaching links in the show notes as well.
Beautiful. Thank
This
you,
has been a fantastic conversation. Thanks so
Aaron.
much for talking to me.
Of
And
course.
thanks for being you and doing what you're doing. I think it's incredibly important work.
Thank you so much, Aaron. I hope to see the fruits of this labor in the very near future. And, I thank you for being a part of it and helping me to tell my story.
Absolutely. Pleasure's all mine.
Appreciate you, Aaron.
Take care, John. That's it for today's episode of For Love of Memoir. Thanks for listening. If something in this conversation moved you, I'd be so grateful if you'd follow the show, leave a comment, or share it with someone you care about. Those small actions tell the algorithm that our content matters, so we can reach more memoir lovers like you.